Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Kevin Polito. I'm the Neighborhood Affairs Division Director, joining you today. I think we're ready to get started. I want to welcome, we're going to hear from Michael Baluch today from our planning department to go over the Washington Avenue resident plan. Before we get started, I always like to recognize our elected officials that are taking the time to join us with you. We have Mayor Stephen Miner as well as his Deputy Chief of Staff Blake Govin. Thank you for joining us. I see we have Kara, who's the aide to Vice Mayor Alex Fernandez. Thank you so much. As well as Sarah from Commissioner Tanya Bott's office. And I think I saw Aaron from Commissioner Dominguez's office as well. So thank you all for taking the time to join us this evening. I apologize if I missed anybody. So today's presentation, Michael's going to walk us through again for the Washington Avenue Resident Plan, or WARP. Then at the end, we'll be here to answer any questions that you may have. So I'm going to turn it over to Michael so you can go ahead and share his screen and kick us off. Michael?
Thanks, Kevin. Let me just share my screen. I'll get started with the presentation. 1 second. Okay, so good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight to discuss the Washington Avenue Residential Plan, which will provide incentives for residential development along Washington Avenue. My name is Michael Baluch, Planning and Design Officer with the Planning Department, under the direction of our Planning Director, Tom Mooney. Tonight, I'm going to review 1, why we are here and the history of this proposal, 2, the area for the incentives, 3, the details of the proposal, 4, the requirements to take advantage of the incentives, 5, I'm going to go through some massing studies, and 6, I'll go through the process and where we are currently. First, this proposal is intended to help reduce transient uses and increase rental housing options along Washington Avenue, which will in turn increase the sense of community and foster neighborhood investment in the area. Now, this proposal started back on May 15th of this year with a referral to the city, with a referral by the City Commission to the Land Use and Sustainability Committee meeting, as well as the Planning Board. On June 10th, the LUSC reviewed the proposal, and on July 30th, the Planning Board provided their first preliminary review of the applications. Now, on September 10th of this year, we did hold a community meeting via Zoom, and October 29th, the Planning Board reviewed again based upon a preliminary review due to the proposed increase in FAR. The reason why the Planning Board had to start the process over again is because after the last community meeting, the proposal was to increase the FAR from 3 to 4, and due to that increase, we had to start the process over again at the Planning Board. Now, the incentive area includes properties along Washington Avenue from 5th Street to 17th Street, and includes the following zoning districts: CPS2, RM2, CD2, and CD3. Now, in terms of what is proposed, this includes incentives for the development of residential buildings, which would consist solely of residential uses above the ground floor. This includes an FAR increase from 1.7 or 2.0 to 4.0, which denotes the maximum square footage that can be constructed on a property. Now, for the CD3 district, the FAR would increase and max out at 3.25. Now, with an increase in FAR, a height increase is proposed from 55 feet to 75 feet. And for the CD3 district, the height would increase from 100 feet to 150 feet. There's also provision to further increase the height up to 100 feet for provided certain requirements are met. This includes not providing parking, except for loading, service for workers and staff, exceeding the minimum micromobility requirements, and participation in a micromobility network. Further, the overall density would be increased from about 100 units per acre up to 175 units per acre, except for the CD3 zoning district, the density would remain at 150 units per acre. Now, for all non-residential projects, the City Commission recently removed the prior FAR bonus from 1.25 to 2.0 for hotel projects, and the height for non-residential projects would be reduced from 75 feet to 50 feet with this proposal. So in order to take advantage of the incentives, Eligible projects must be residential, must fully vacate any and all existing transient uses, must vacate any and all existing short-term rentals, must provide a restrictive covenant requiring that any rentals not be less than 6 months plus 1 day. There is also a requirement to preserve and restore contributing buildings as may be required by the Historic Preservation Board. There would be a maximum unit size of 1,200 square feet, although this number may be increased somewhat. All portions of the building above the first level must consist of residential units only. This requires a micro-mobility component accessible by all residents, limitations on parking, but a requirement to provide loading areas for the building, servicing and staff, and require that a full building permit be attained by September 1st of 2032. Now, just this week on November 5th, the Land Use Sustainability Committee discussed the proposal again, and some additional changes are now proposed. This would include incorporating a TDR program, which means transfer of development rights, which would require that to get to the max FAR of 4.0, a portion of the square footage would come from the transfer or sale of FAR from ascending district. The idea would be to increase the FAR for contributing buildings in another historic district, such as Flamingo Park, and these properties could then in turn sell their increase to property owners along Washington Avenue. Funds from the sale would be required to improve, restore the historic property in the ascending district. Also part of the LUSC discussion was to include an attainability or affordability requirement for a certain percentage of the increased floor area. This would, for example, require that a portion of the units be reserved for households below a certain income level at a point that would be higher than what is currently classified as workforce housing. Now, for reference, a maximum of 140% of the area median income applies to workforce housing. The max in this case may be something closer to 160% of AMI or higher. Next, I'm going to go through some massing studies with some examples for areas along Washington Avenue. The first is for an example property at 705 Washington Avenue. This slide shows a 3.0 FAR and a height of 75 feet. The next slide shows the same height and an FAR of 4.0. In this case, the building just got slightly wider with the same height. The next is the same property with a 4.0 FAR and a maximum height of 100 feet. In this case, the building is skinnier on its east to west axis, but taller at 100 feet. The next slide shows a property at 1260 Washington Avenue. This diagram shows a 3.0 FAR and a maximum height of 75 feet. Next, we have the same property with an FAR of 4.0 and a height remaining at 75 feet. And next, we have a 4.0 FAR and a height of 100 feet for the same property at 1260 Washington Avenue. Next, we have an example for 1261 Washington Avenue. This diagram shows a 3.0 FAR at a height of 75 feet. Next, a 4.0 FAR at a height of 75 feet. And last, a 4.0 FAR at a height of 100 feet. So we are currently in step 2 again of the 6-step review process. After the meeting tonight, the planning board will review the plan again on November 26th. And then there will be a first city commission meeting, followed by another community workshop meeting, and then a second city commission adoption hearing. With that, that concludes the presentation. I'll open up for any questions or comments.
Great, thanks so much, Michael. So if anyone has any questions, go ahead and click the raise your hand feature on your Zoom. If you're participating on a mobile device, there should be 3 dots, or it's under reactions. Just raise your hand and we'll get to you. So I'm going to go to our first person with their hand up. Username is Johan Moore. Friendly reminder, if you could all keep your comments within 2 minutes. We have a few people on the call, so we just want to give everybody an opportunity to speak. Johan?
Good evening. Thank you, Kevin, and thank you, Michael. I will start by saying that I think the LUSC updates to the proposal are, I'm going to use the word stunning. They really make me entirely supportive of this proposal. I have notes scribbled to myself for this meeting today, and it's as if that meeting had already peeked into my notes in my appointment calendar. I want to just add in an angle on the impact on the sewerage system. I understand that there is calculated to be no additional impact, given that we've lost population. New people shouldn't really add. It's just going to shift it around a little bit. I understand that. I'd like to advocate, and I don't know that it's necessarily through this process, but I want to get that out, for maximum green benefits of these buildings. And I don't know how to get it into this, or if it's an ancillary, a separate item, but ideally green setbacks, green roofs, or solar on the rooftops, as well as the possibility of the benefits of the aggregate stormwater capture capability of putting cisterns under all these buildings that are all going to need foundation work. So I just want to put that out there. I think the proposal is wonderful. I've really enjoyed seeing the process be so interactive. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Next up, screen name is Darren. If you could just state your full name for us.
Yeah, hey, Darren Spadala here over at 1621 Bay Road. Just two quick questions. The first is, to the extent that there are thoughts about changing the max apartment sizing, what is currently being proposed or discussed? Or is there nothing at this point?
Sure. So the idea would be to have something larger than 1,200, but probably less than 2,000. And maybe something that would be modified now, since we do have this possibility of a attainability requirement for a certain percentage of the square footage, as well as for the incorporation of the TDR program to transfer, FAR from, for example, another sending district to this area, which would also help, improve the renovation or maintenance of historic properties.
Thank you. And the other quick question I had is, given that we are building this without, by the way, I just want to say, I think this is a fantastic proposal. I'm super supportive and I think it's amazing. And Commissioner Suarez should be congratulated on bringing this to the table. Second question is on parking, because I know there is no parking being built in these units, but is there any discussion or planning around potentially developing agreements with either local parking garages or developing some local garages that become community parking spaces for those with cars who are not able to park them in their buildings?
So the idea here is that the people that would want to live in these units would not have a car. So it's marketed and would be, geared to that type of resident that would not need a car. So there's no proposal to, incorporate parking elsewhere. The idea is to make this desirable for somebody who doesn't have a car and doesn't want to pay for the expense of having a parking spot that they're not needing.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to go next to who appears to be our final caller. Usually when I say that, people remember to raise their hand. So if you, again, have any questions about the plan or want to make a comment, go ahead and click the raise your hand feature. I'm going to go to our final caller, Irene Bigger, and then I'll turn it over to Michael if you could just remind us next steps. Irene?
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. First of all, thank you for having this meeting this evening. I represent the Art Deco Neighborhood Association, and just wanted to mention that, as Johan had said, we are in full support of this plan, and we are very happy that the city is listening to our needs. We've been voicing this for a long time, and I guess you answered the question. I have a couple of questions about infrastructure. We have made a plea that we did not want more buildings and business models associated to tourism because we're worried about the burden on our infrastructure. So appreciate that. I can always ask offline more questions about that. But our focus too, you just mentioned that you want to attract residents that would most likely be walking in the area. I live on 15th Street in Collins. I love the fact that I have accessibility to many things. One of the main items that a lot of residents express concern about is that since we lost the Art Deco market, we don't have a supermarket. Not that the Art Deco market was a supermarket, but it was a market nonetheless. That we need more retail businesses like that. And for these retail businesses to succeed for the needs of the current residents and future residents, they need the space, the optimal space on those ground floors. And I guess I question the micromobility space. I wonder, and I have been told as well that others do feel this way, that there is a concern, is this the best use of space, is what I have been asked to relay. And I believe that as well, because we do want our retail spaces to have the most amount of space on the ground floor. In particular, like I said, the residents are curious if we could get a functioning and successful market amongst other businesses. And my last question is what is the size, minimum, maximum for the living space for residents to live in? Is this going to be, I guess, efficient use in terms of maximum space, but something that, will be livable? So I appreciate the time. Those are the two main questions that I have. Thank you.
Sure, let me touch on your first question on the micromobility component. So we also have a proposal to modify the code requirements for the 400 block of Lincoln Road with the idea to foster bring in a larger grocery store. So that would, and we're also, as part of that, that block would have different mobility requirements with the allowance for that component to be provided not just on the first floor, but higher in the building. So that's something that we're looking at to encourage a larger grocer to come into the area and really have a more focused look at where the micromobility component would be in the building. In terms of the infrastructure, my understanding is the city may be doing a capacity analysis in terms of the sanitary sewer for the South Beach area. Now, on top of that, anybody coming in for a building permit would have to do an analysis and provide that, as well as part of their building permit plans, they'd be required to construct any needed improvements to meet the capacity standards that are set out. So that's something that may be done as part of a capacity analysis for the overall South Beach area, as well as it would still be required as part of any building permit for an individual project constructing in the area. Now, in terms of the unit sizes, we're not modifying the minimum requirements right now. The code does require a minimum square footage of an apartment unit for 550 square feet with an average square footage of 800 square feet. So that's in place right now, and that would not be modified as part of this. Right now, the thought is to only put a cap on the maximum size, so that we don't have this wouldn't be for the ultra or luxury development. That would be second or third homes, and would really be for people that are living and working in the area.
Great, thank you so much. So our person with their hand up, it might be our last person, is screen name is Patricia. If you could say your full name for us. But
Hi, Kevin. Thank you. It's Patricia Agnello. How are you?
hey there, good, how are you? Thanks for
Thank-
calling.
Oh, thank you so much for having this. It's been really informative. And Michael, thank you very much as well. I do have a question with respect to, since you're saying that it is for people who work in the area, and do we have an idea of what the monthly rents would be or the annual rents? Is there a target?
Well, with the idea of having a attainability requirement, it would be based upon a percentage of the area median income. For example, that number for the county right now is about $80,000. So at a number up to 160% of that, that's based upon various depending on the household size. So we can look into more information provided for that. But the idea here is to not require workforce housing, but it would be something that would be a little bit higher above that level.
So I'm sorry. So say it again, a percentage of your income?
The percentage. So in terms of the affordability requirement, right now we have, what's in place in the code is a workforce housing requirement. if a workforce housing project is proposed, there's a requirement that it be for people that have their capped at 140% of the area median. So you take the $80,000 times 140%, and that'd be the cap of the person's income to be living in that building.
I
The
see.
idea is, that number would be higher than that, maybe 160% or something higher. So it would be slightly higher than what would be required for a workforce housing unit. And now just for reference, I'm not sure if you're aware of or heard of the Live Local applications that were fostered by the state. Now, in terms of those Live Local applications, those can be developed in commercial districts. And in those cases, the income is capped at 120% of the area median income. So this would be above the 120 and above the 140. Something new that would be probably 160% or maybe slightly higher.
And then, Michael, I'm sorry, maybe I'm being dense about that. And then there's a percentage of that cap that they would pay in rent?
Yeah, it's a percentage of the of their income that's part of the rent.
I see. And what is that?
Based upon household size.
I see.
It's depending on the household size.
I see. Thank you. Okay. Thanks so much.
You're
Thank you. Next up, we're going to go to screen name is Donnie. If you could say your full name for us.
Hi, my name is Don Abrahamson. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I had a quick question on the parking for these new units. If they're living in these new addresses, are they going to be able to get, for instance, Zone 2 parking permits for a vehicle if they chose to?
That's a good observation. It's something that should be brought to the city commission's attention, so they can decide whether or not to prohibit people that live in these units from getting those residential parking passes.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much. I'm going to go. We have Commissioner Suarez. Oh, sorry, Commissioner. I accidentally muted you there. There you go.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, just to answer the last caller's question, and I've already put this on the record that no, they would not apply for Zone 2 in Flamingo Park.
Great. Thank you so much, Commissioner. And then we're going to go to our final caller. I know I said that a few times tonight, but Johan Moore, I know you already spoke, so we'll give you just 1 minute to just quickly wrap up. Johan?
Oh, thank you so much. I'm glad the commissioner's on, because in light of his rather alarming announcement that he's trying desperately to ward off of a possibly 300-foot tall tower at Lenox and 6th Street, I wonder if I can pose a question rather bluntly about that. Should we, in fact, especially with all the additional let's call them equity and resilience enhancements to this item, should we in fact be glad if developers take us up on this rather than on the much more expansive provisions under Live Local?
Yeah, if you don't mind, Kevin, I can tune into that. Yeah, that's the point, right? We've been sort of staunchly against any sort of development, and look, there's obviously reasons for that, but the state has come in with a heavy stick and said, we're gonna impose it on you, and it's gonna be out of scale with your neighborhood. And by doing this, we have an opportunity now, and we have an argument against developers who write checks for $50, $100, $200,000 to lobbyists to get state legislatures to put these bills forward that preempt us from zoning regulations. So we could say finally that we're playing ball, and that we understand there's an affordability and housing crisis, and we're addressing it. That's more tailored to our city, and so there'd be less of a need for the state to come in and punish us.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. So that wraps us up for tonight. Michael, if you could just give us once again, what are the next steps so everybody knows where this is going next, and then we'll conclude today.
So let me just bring back to the presentation. So this will next be reviewed by the planning board on November 26th. And then after that, it will be scheduled for city commission hearing. We don't have that date yet, but that's the next step. If anybody is interested in hearing the discussion further, I would stay tuned to or watch the planning board meeting that starts at 9 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday, November 26th.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you, Commissioner Suarez, for joining us, and all our staff that participate in the call. And I see Joe Magazine as well, Commissioner Magazine. Thank you for joining us. With that, we'll go ahead and wrap up today's call. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Thank you, and have a great night.